Bole Baba ki jai, Jai Mahamaya ki jai. So in our last discourse, we were talking more about the characteristics of the gunas. And now we're in chapter 10. So King Janamejaya, hearing this narration, said, "Oh, Maharishi, who was that Satyavrata, the Brahman whose name you have just taken? In what country was he born? Of what nature was he? Please describe all these to me and satisfy my curiosity. How did he hear that sound, I? How did he repeat that word? How come on this success to him, this illiterate Brahmana, at this very instant? And how is it that the great goddess, who is omniscient and omnipresent, was pleased with him? Kindly describe this interesting incident in detail." Vyasa, the son of Satyavrata, thus asked by the king Janamejaya, as dressed in the following pure, sweet, and highly liberal words. Vyasa said, "Hear, O king, you are the best and foremost in the Kuru clan. What I before heard in the assembly of Munis, I am now relating that ancient story, highly beneficial to you. O best of Kurus, once in my travels in the holy places of pilgrimages, I came to a beautiful forest, a very sacred place, frequented by the Munis. That time there was staying Sanaka, Sanatana, and the other sons of Brahma who were liberated while living. I went there and bowed down to the Munis and took my seat. Then the religious conversations ensued there in the assembly, when the great sage Maharishi Jamadagni began to question the Munis in the following terms. Who is very quickly satisfied which are the gods and grants the desired boons? Kindly tell me this as early as possible." Thus questioned by the Muni Jamadagni, another Maharishi Lomasa, one of the assembly, spoke. "O Muni, hear my reply to your question. The goddess of energy is the best of the devas, most excellent and easy to worship, and the highest. Those who want welfare, they ought to worship this supreme force. She is the Paraprakriti, the highest nature, the conditioned by Maya, time, space, and causation. She grants all the desires, does good to all, pervades everywhere, and is the mother of Brahma and the other high-souled devas. She is the first Prakriti and is the root of this gigantic tree of the universe. If anyone calls the Devi in remembrance or distinctly utters her name, she fulfills all of their desires. If anybody worships her, she is at once filled with mercy and becomes ready to grant boons. O Munis, how once on a time a Brahmin uttering one letter of her mystical mantra obtained her grace. I am now describing that most auspicious history before you. Please be pleased to hear. Once on a time there lived in the country of Kosala a famous Brahmin named Devadatta. He had no sons or daughters, and therefore started duly, according to the prescribed rules, a sacrifice called putrishi for the sake of obtaining children. So on the banks of the Tamasa River, the Brahmin erected a temporary building with open sides for performing the ceremony, and there built an altar and invited the Brahmins versed in the Vedas and wise in performing sacrificial rites. There he placed the fire and began to perform, according to the strict rules, this special sacrifice. And he had all the different Brahmins there and the different Munis doing their particular jobs. And one of the stations was called the Hota. And this is the reciter of the Samavedas. and this position was filled by Gobila. Now, when Gobila started to recite the hymn, he began to sing in accented tones called Sarita and the Rathanatara Sama in 7 tunes. But suddenly he began to draw breaths in frequently, and consequently there was a break in the time in the accent of the singing of the Vedas. Seeing this, Devadatta became angry and immediately said to Gobila, "Well, Gobila, you are the foremost of the Munis, and still you are doing your work like an illiterate man. I fear obstacles may arise in the getting of my son in this my sacrifice." Gobila then became much enraged and told Devadatta, "Your son will be illiterate, hypocrite, and dumb. Behold, every being is subject to breathing and respiring. It is very hard to control them. There is no fault of mine in the accents of my songs being thus broken. It is strange that you, being intelligent, cannot understand this." Being afraid to hear the curse from Gobila, Devadatta became very sorry and said, "O Muni, I have done no serious offense. Why are you so offended without any cause? See, the Munis are void of anger, and they always give delight to others. O best of Brahmanas, my offense is very trifling. Why have you inflicted on me so severe a curse? I was already under mental agony since I had no sons, and now you have made me suffer more pain. For the Vedic Pandits declare that it is better not to have any son than to have an illiterate, stupid son. The more so when a Brahmin son is illiterate. He is blamed by one and all. An illiterate son is unfit for action, O Brahmin. What shall I do with an illiterate son? Whoever wants to have any fruits in any action will never invite an illiterate Brahmin to take his seat at any ceremony relating to the Pitris or the Devas. Again, on the other hand, if the Brahmins versed in the Vedas study the Vedas even after they have taken their food, their father and forefathers are happy and play cheerfully in their heavens. Therefore, O Gobila, you being the foremost of the Brahmins who are versed in the Vedas, what have you said just now? See, in this world, death is rather to be preferred than to have an illiterate son. How is it then that you have cursed me that I would get an illiterate son, when you are the best one, highly qualified with knowledge? O high-minded one, you are capable to relieve the distressed. I am bowing down to your feet. Show your mercy and reconsider your curse." Devadatta, saying these words, fell prostrate at the feet and began to eulogize the Muni in a very pitiful words, being very much grieved and with tears in his eyes. Seeing him thus distressed, Gobila was moved with pity. The persons that are noble have their anger satiated after a short while. The anger of the ignoble lasts for a very long time. The water is naturally cool, but it gets hot in contact with fire or heat. And no sooner the heat is drawn away, water gets again cooled quickly. The merciful Gobila then addressed the distressed Devadatta. Your son, though at first illiterate, will afterwards be very learned. The Brahmin, Devadatta, was very glad on getting this boon. Then, completing the sacrifices, he rewarded all the Brahmins with their due dakshina and dismissed them. In the course of time, his fair chaste wife Rohini became pregnant, and Devadatta performed all the ceremonies. When at an auspicious day, his wife Rohini gave birth to a male child, Devadatta performed the naivitis of the newborn child and saw its face. Next, that knower of the Puranas, Devadatta, kept the name of the child as Uttaya. When the son was 8 years old, Devadatta performed the sacred thread ceremony duly. Next, the child was made to accept the vow of brahmachari, and Devadatta made him study the Vedas. But the child could not pronounce a single word and used to sit simply like a stupid boy. And though he tried in various ways to read and write, that young man never paid the slightest attention, simply sat idly seeing this. His father was very sorry and much grieved. Thus 12 years passed, yet the boy could not learn anything. The rumor went around that Uttatiya, the son of Devadatta, turned out very illiterate. All the Brahmins, ascetics, and other persons came to learn this fact. Wherever Uttatiya used to go in any forest on a hermitage, the people used to laugh at him, ridicule his father and mother, and began to chide that illiterate son. Thus blamed by father, mother, and all the other persons, dispassion actually began to occupy the heart of Uttatiya. Once, when rebuked by his father and mother, he decided they said it would have been better to have a blind and lame son instead of an illiterate brute. Uttatiya took recourse to renunciation and went to a dense forest. On the banks of the Ganges, in a beautiful spot free from obstacles, he built a beautiful hut and began to subside on roots and fruits of the forest, and with collected mind, having made the excellent vow, I will never speak untruth, and holding the vow of celibacy, he lived in that beautiful hermitage. Thus ends the 10th chapter in the 3rd skanda of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses, by Maharishi Vedavyasa, relating the story of Satyavrata. Jai Mahamaya ki, Jai Bole Baba ki, Jai.